my ministry at the National Church. Thank you all for, number one, it's a small thing, wearing orange. Symbols, colors, presents, open hearts, open hands are incredibly important in a world today where we too often make a fist. And it's only when we open our hearts and our minds that we admit that we don't know everything and that we need to be taught. That is one of the things that I talked about at some of my presentations, where especially when I was in BC, I said that to the elders. I said, I am a visitor to your land. Wherever I go, I acknowledge that. And I ask a favor of you, the elders of this land and territories, to treat me like a child. Because I need to know, I need to be taught, so that I do not hurt you or embarrass myself. When we approach things, we should always do it in humility and deepest respect. Because after all, we know the success rate when we as priests come into a parish and say, well, you've been doing it this way for this while, but let me show you the right way. You know how long you're going to be there. In this gathering here, in this sacred space, there's history. A history that we as a church, we as Canadians, need to acknowledge and struggle through. I've said it in many presentations, as Canadians, we knew more about the United States and the USSR, Soviet Union, Russia, and of course the Americas than we did our own Canadian history. The residential school experience, the residential process that the church decided was going to participate in is something that, a legacy that we all inherit as Anglicans and as Canadians. In my October Feather and Sage article that I put in with the Anglican Journal, I call it Feather and Sage is because, number one, a feather is always used up as a prayer. So I offer a prayer. Sage, sage wisdom. Or else, if not that, sage, something we do to cleanse something. So all of these experiences, I sort of had to be a little bit hard in October's writing. And I had to speak with my wife Tracy about it last night, and where I feel incredibly hard on myself and at the same time questioning. Because you need to know this is my own therapy as I say this. This is what I grew up with. I grew up with my mother, who was in residential school. On September 30th of this month, I will be going back to my home reserve. And in that gathering, they're going to be commemorating a monument to the residential schools on my reserve. St. Anthony's Roman Catholic and St. Barnabas Anglican. My mother was in residential school, but because these residential schools were too close to her own relatives, they shipped her off way down south by Calgary so that she had no one. And so they put her with the Blackfoot and the Blood and Sioux, who are, as Plains Cree, we always have naturally struggled and warred with. With Bishop Sid Black, my dear brother, who's Blackfoot. We always laughed whenever we were sitting at a table one time at a gathering. And I said, just imagine if our grandparents saw us sitting together. And then he goes, yeah, but we'd also have to laugh about our own history. And where, you stole our horses. And I said, yeah, but you stole our women. Which is more valuable. We laugh because we have to. As Indigenous peoples, on your shirts, you hear and you see the stories. Every child talking about the children. Children are the future. Children were you might as well say, the axle of all our lives in the community. The children were the future. And the grandparents were always those wisdom keepers who taught the stories, who told of the people and told the history of the people to the children so that they would always know who they are in their identity and where they come from. Every child matters. I believe that the church in its colonial process understood this, and that's one of the reasons that they came to take the children away. And they went into the people's homes and they took the children from them. There's paintings by a painter named Monkman who painted these amazing pictures, and where it shows the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as well as the priests in the black robes, as well as the nuns, coming in and taking the children, pulling them out of the parents' arms. And it has in the background on the right-hand side, children running into the bush to hide. This is the residential school experience. So on September 30th, I go back to my home reserve, and where I will be doing a ceremony there with Bishop Adam Halkett from the Diocese of Saskatchewan, and hopefully the Roman Catholic Bishop. And where we will together say prayers, and we will pray for the residential school experience and all our relatives in their residential school experience, and where they have to call themselves survivors. There's a reason for that. The horror stories and the trauma that they went through is something that not only did they experience, but is passed on down into the generations. For myself, and I know, please, I ask anyone, minimizers will always try to make it and say, well, wasn't that bad? Well, we had the same thing too. In the UK, we had the residential school experience. And the denialists, ones who say it didn't happen. There's no way it could have happened with our government. That's a made-up story, fake news. Boy, it sounds familiar in today's world, doesn't it? And I wrote in that October article that we only move forward as fast as the slowest among us and most resistant. We have a lot to learn. This gathering here on this sacred ground, Shingwauk, the intent and the purpose of Shingwauk was it for the people, for the betterment of the people, the hope of the people, that they would be able to work with the newcomers, and that they would have a foot up to be respected and understood. But it didn't turn out that way. And thus the pain, thus the brokenness that we feel between the generations, and where we struggle to find our own identities of who we are as people on this land, in our own land. Give you a check out in reality. 1964 was when my people, the Plains Cree, were allowed to vote in Canada. 1964, when we were allowed to be able to go free enough to leave the reserve without permission of the Indian agent. 1964, when we were allowed to enter into a store. We think of this as ancient history. It's not, it's present. The struggle for us is to be educated and to learn the history, our own history. A small, tiny, almost minuscule step is a land acknowledgement. I remember at the very beginning, everybody was doing it. To the present where, well, we have it on the front of our church at the, at the bottom there, and if you want to read it, you can. Because it became inconvenient to say it every Sunday. How do we respond in the world today as a church for a place of prayer? When we are supposed to have, as the sign says at the bottom, We are a welcoming community. And to struggle to push everybody to see that the church needs to be more. It needs to be more than our own social clubs, where like-minded people get together and talk over how we can solve world peace. It needs to be a place of prayer where we lift up and we embrace all the children of God's creation, and welcoming all, regardless of status, color of hair, color of skin, or style they like to worship. But to recognize in humility that the Creator has brought each and every one of us from a different place, and together we bring our voices together. I'm one who likes to share stories. I come from a long line of storytellers. In this place here, we've been blessed with smoke. And the smoke is that which gets into your hair, gets into your clothes, just the same way that we use the incense of the church. And it reminds you that the prayers of the people in the smudging ceremony, which is exactly the same as the serum primer, for those of you that love the old church traditions. God be in my head, God be in my eyes, God be in my mouth, God be in my heart, God be with me in my journey. Is the same prayer that we use in our smudging ceremonies. So try to tell me that God is not omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Sermons. Are these not Galileans? How is it that we hear them in our own tongue? As people from Mesopotamia, Persia, and it goes on. And at the same time, how the world didn't understand and ridicule. Oh, look at that, they're drunk, and it's only 9 o'clock. We need to be better, do better, and live out the gospel truth in all that we say and all that we do. It begins with small steps. And maybe it begins with wearing an orange shirt. I leave you with homework. Do research why the orange. Do research into the land acknowledgement of why it is the way it is. People always call me and say, what would be a good land acknowledgement? I said, the one you write. Because you need to know your people, know the land, and understand how that land came to be. Using the language of that can be understood by all and for all. I had a good discussion with my Uber driver. That's where it happens, right? On the way to on my way to the airport when I was coming here. And he said, what right do the Indigenous people have to say that this is their land? All I could think was, what an opportunity for ministry. And I said, well, I could turn it around and say what gives the newcomers the right to say it's their land. Because Indigenous people, we didn't understand ownership. How can you own something that is not yours, but was given for all of God's creation? How can you put something around it in the little wires and sticks on the corners and say, this is mine? Don't come onto my property, get off my driveway. Or as we all look forward to when we get really nice and old and sitting on the front porch, get off my lawn! I'm going to scold Nan, please. But what gives us the right to say that? He says, well, where's their land deed and title? I go, seriously? I said, well, we were here. The only ones when the discoverers, when they came and they landed on, mistakenly landed in India. Indians, wow. and then they claimed it. The only thing that the people recognized of the discoverers was that they were lost. We didn't know we were lost. This has always been home, since time immemorial, as we say. And we're still here. I was watching the news last night in Saskatchewan. They're fighting for land again. There's a disagreement on how the land was used and how was it sometimes taken and used in wrong ways. And the Indigenous are fighting amongst themselves as well as the farmers that are on reserve land. And I'm going like, how can this still be happening? But it is a truth that we live on every day. We have nothing. When I go back to the home, back to my home on the reserve, I own no land, I own no house, I own nothing. Everything that I have, especially with my relatives, is given in community. I own nothing, and I never will own anything. That which I have is meant to be given away. That is the Indigenous way. So when he asks me, what gives them the right to say, and where's their deed and title? I said, we were always here. I said, but you need to understand how we came into the process. We accepted the newcomers and said, come, there's enough to share with us all, between us all. But a different language was spoken, and they heard that it is free. So much so that they sent off to the UK, they sent off to other countries and said, come, there's free land here. $10, you can buy 160 acres. Because there's nobody there. And they took the Indigenous people, put them on reserves, usually in the most remote, isolated parts. Or else if you take a look, I did that with my kids when they were young, look through the United States. I apologize to any Americans here. But all the reserves, for example, the Four Corners, all desert. In Florida, all swamp. Along California, in the mountains. On my home reserve, all sand and gravel. But the government didn't know that below the soil was heavy oil, was natural gas, which we all have drilled and capped and waiting. We'll see how far EV electric vehicles go. Not going to fly very well in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but anyway, the only place where you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Flat of land. But this is an opportunity for us in the church here to learn about the harvesting of the aromatics and the beauty of the land. For my relatives, as I've said today, my relatives from here. I've called many of you in my gatherings and my speeches that you are my relatives also. And it's my job to prepare you so that you do not get embarrassed. And to humble you so that you do not embarrass yourselves. Either by privilege or else, if not that, dare I say it, ignorance. By going on to another person's territory and saying, mine. All I can think was those seagulls. You ever see that cartoon? Mine, fighting over that one French fry. So, before I start being hard and mean, I have great hopes for the church. Otherwise, why would I be here? It would be so easy for all of us to walk. There's been many times that I've been tempted, sorely tempted, to walk. I'm trying not hard not to cry. I love the church. I see hope in what we do in the Christian message. God, our Creator, gave us faith. Everyone faith. Human beings created the church. And the church has failed. And we continue to fail the day that we still continue to deny, to minimize the story of the other. There is one thing that unifies us, and that is a song. The song that each and every one of us have started and sung right at the very beginning. And it has a common beat. And that beat is your song, which you will carry before the Creator, who will turn to you and say, "Welcome, my child." It has been a long journey, hasn't it? Many have crossed your path and your trail. Have you learned from them? And have you shared your song with them? And it's up to us how we carry that song out. I grew up in a community which was both Christian and Indigenous in our traditions and practices. We would hide out in the bush, in the back bush, and do our ceremonies. And then when it's time for church, we'd come out, put on our Sunday best, and go to church. After service, go back home, change, go back out into the bush. How you carry your ministry will be paramount in telling of the days to come and the tomorrows. Back home, we have many songs. I want to share one with you, which Plains people use. It's a song called "The End of the Trail." It's used in funerals and back home. As a priest, I am incredibly honored. I still do all my relatives' funerals. I come, and I am treated in the most wonderful way, as one of them. I have no special place. I have no special honors. I'm given the greatest gift of being family. There's no pomp, there's no ceremony. After the family comes and says their last goodbye, the casket is closed, turned. The pallbearers are brought up. They still wear the ribbons. And they come and they stand beside the casket. The MC, one of the elders, comes and gets me, pulls me to the front. All my cousins take up their drums and they start to sing. And they precede us, lead us out of the hall. Usually because the church is way too small and could not contain all the community. As they do that, everyone, community all rises. And the casket is slowly taken out by the pallbearers. I precede all of that. And the drummers stand on the outside as an honor guard to welcome the body. They take it out to the wagon and they put it back in the wagon drawn by horses. The family comes in and everyone gets to touch the wagon and the casket one last time. The drummers get into the wagon and they sing honor songs, the Eagle Song, all the way to the cemetery as everybody walks, the community walks behind. They drum as the casket is lowered, singing the honor song. We all have a song to sing. All of us. That is why we are one in the family of the Creator. It's our politics which divides and separates. It's our politics which divide and separate and say, this is mine. How different would the world look if we treated each other with respect and honor? That is what the grandfather teachings teach us. It teaches us about bravery, to be able to walk into the next steps without fear, honesty, humility, and it goes on. It teaches us how to be good human beings. As the National Indigenous Archbishop, I believe that the Indigenous Ministries has something to offer back to the church about walking in humility and accepting the story, the legacy that we all share as Canadians. It's time for us to treat each other better with respect and dignity and honor. I pray your song will be an honor one as you sing it before the Creator, and where the Creator will know you because of that song. He's planted that in your heart. The church tomorrow, I have great hopes for. Because the church will be there as the Creator. It's in all things. And the Creator is still here with us today. If we but open our eyes to greater truths in ourselves, and we humble ourselves, and as my grandfather taught me, Christopher, you make sure you never rush too fast. When you rush too fast, you don't see where your feet are. And if you don't know where your feet are, you disrespect the land and the peoples. Slow down. I say this to my brothers and sisters, the bishops, and your graces, the archbishops. Slow down. The world makes our schedules for us. I know that. But take time, breathe, touch a tree. Because a tree stands in one place, but yet has great knowledge of that area. Because they've taken the time to see the grass, feel the breeze, feel the warmth of the sun, to hear the water lapping upon the shore, and how Creator has given everything to us and gives us honor and respect, all of that back with life. Life that is given to us. Because I don't know how many of you can create oxygen just yet. You're good at carbon dioxide, but not oxygen. Plants do that for us. I close with one last thing now. This is it. I want to first acknowledge that I was given the great honor of a gift which we didn't use yet, which is the sage that was given to me as a gift from our Metropolitan Archbishop. And so that I want to say thank you. And it will be used in ceremonies across this land. Sacred Circle, Sacred Beginnings, our youth gathering, as well as the ASIP, Anglican Council of Indigenous Peoples. But we use symbols. And this is my symbol of prayer, the eagle feather. These are two feathers that were given to me, and I always tell the story of them because everything comes with a story. When I was in New Jersey and working for the United Nations to draft up a document for UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. What a title. They presented this to me. They said, we don't know why these are together, but we would be asked that you would accept them. And I said to them, I would accept them with great honor, because it is who I am as I walk in two worlds, the church and our peoples. This side, the feathers have been chipped and beaten up and abused. That's my life, my youth, as I grew up. Threatened, spat on, assaulted more times than I can count for being an Indian. And the white, wisdom. I like to think of it as wisdom of age. I'm incredibly humble, just in case I didn't tell you. But it is also a symbol of wisdom and hope. And I hold, and they're bound together to always remind me, and they're my working feathers. I have used them to bless the bishops as they are consecrated and as they are put into their place. They've blessed more congregations than I can care to count. And they have blessed amazing communities and family. So I close with this. Be a blessing. Let's change this world around. Because you cannot change the world. The only thing you can change is the way you think, the way you act, and the way you walk today. Only you can do that. The church, I have great hopes for. That we together can start walking as one, as we are meant in creation. Be blessed so that you can be a blessing in the steps and the journey tomorrow. This is my last day with you. I leave tomorrow morning. And I get to go back home to my family as I prepare for the ceremonies back on my reserve. I ask you, pray for your leadership. Remember your leadership and pray for your leadership every Sunday and every day. I ask that you love, you bless, and you pray for Archbishop Dan, who loves you and prays for you as well. Who, like a good parent, has sometimes very harsh words to say to you. Even that dreaded no. but it is said with love and care and a promise to hear your voice always. And if you have an opportunity and chance, keep me in your prayers, because I can do nothing without it. I want to say thank you to my relatives here for your prayers, your offering of smudge. I thank you for your teachings and your standing for the history of this land and the peoples, our ancestors. I have been in places in Canada where they have denied our Indigenous history. And when I talk about one community, 175,000 Indigenous peoples, they said, "You mean Canada?" I said, "No, just here." They said, "Really? I didn't know we had reserves here in the big city." And I said, "Oh, no, they let us off now." Education is probably the strongest weapon we have right now. It's not bullets or spears or arrows. It's education, which can change the world. And I pray that you will search out people in your community. We are a treaty people, as has been said in the past. Understand what the treaties are. Understand the treaties that were written with the Crown and written with Canada. And understand why, when we start talking your language and say, our land, why the people take offense. We learned your language of commerce. So much so when we say our land, everyone fights back against us. I leave with that.